Dear atheist, as a theist, as a Christian, I want to ask you to stop doing 10 things, okay? 10 things is what I'm imploring you to stop doing when talking to or debating with a Christian, someone like me.
Well, I'm always up for reviewing my methods. Of course, any change in my interaction with apologists will be predicated on the basis that what you state is reasonable. If, for example, you simply tell us to stop questioning your assertion that God exists, that's not reasonable and your demand will be rejected for reasons I hope would be obvious. If you have to handicap your opponent before you can even attempt to forward your position, then I'm sorry, that position has no value and should be merely discarded. Now today's video comes from C4C Apologetics and is titled, Dear Atheist, 10 Things You Should Stop Saying. Now I get a lot of apologists telling me what I should and should not say, but never any reasoned explanation as to why. So I'm interested to see if C4C Apologetics changes this and actually justifies what they state.
First off, stop claiming that theists or Christians have the burden of proof for proving God's existence. How burden of proof works is anybody making a claim has to back that claim up. So if I were to say God does exist, I do have the burden of proof. I will have to try to prove that. If you say God does not exist, you are making a claim, and you have to prove that argument right there.
But theism is the assertion, whilst atheism is just the lack thereof. If someone claims that society is being run by reptilian overlords without providing any evidence, and I naturally respond, I don't believe you, me stating that, me being an reptilian, doesn't then mean I have to prove the non-existence of said reptilian overlords. That, just as with my atheism, is simply me making clear the facts that I reject your unfounded assertion. That is the general state of atheism. I have no justifiable reason founded in sound evidence to believe in a God, therefore I don't believe in a God. It's really that simple. Now I can go further with a few specific examples, namely in noting the descriptive contradictions that exist with many deities, including the deity of Christianity. Consider the Euthyphro dilemma, which demonstrates that the definition of God as supplied by Christians as being all-knowing, all-powerful and all-just is incompatible with the universe we exist in, hell or not. Now do note, this does not mean that no God could exist, only that God as described with those very specific traits could not. Either way, it's pretty irrelevant as no theist has ever supported the existence of God utilizing evidence-based reasoning. Instead, they have to rely on various pieces of fallacious trickery to try and smuggle said assertions past inspection, such as God are the gaps. So yes, theists do have the burden of proof by default, and no, we're not going to stop pointing to said fact.
Second thing, please stop saying that Christians have a blind faith. There is nothing about Christianity that requires or even that God asks for a blind faith. We're told in the book of Romans, we're told in Psalm 19, creation bears witness to the Creator. We are told that the conscience and the law is written onto our hearts. And again, those provide evidences of a Creator. How blind faith works is non-existence. You put faith in something that you can't see, you don't have evidence for, and I don't believe that's the God of Christian scripture. Matter of fact, with evidence, we have the same evidence. We have creation, we have the conscience, the abstract concepts of thought and love and things like that. So we take these evidences, it's called circumstantial evidence, indirect evidence, and we find out through abductive reasoning which is most reasonable to attribute this to a God or to material or naturalistic explanations. At the end of the day, you got to answer yourself one question. Did mind come from matter, or did matter come from mind?
Mind came from matter, a fact we've known for centuries, and yet religious apologists still ignore to this day as if their ignorance were an argument. Disagree? Well, there's a very simple way for you to validate your perspective, and that's show me a non-material mind. Beyond that, this question is just utter tripe, presented as if it were meaningful. As for evidence of God, none of the things presented here even touch said topic. The way our universe exists is simply evidence for the way our universe exists. Everything ever observed has been purely naturalistic and material, giving zero indication of the supernatural and/or immaterial. We observe nature, no magic required. As for the Bible asserting to have evidence, all we have here is the authors of a series of books asserting that the position they forward as an attempt to get people to follow said position is true. So what? A con man isn't going to tell you that he's a con man. He's going to present said con as genuine. The fact that you get so suckered in by this is really revealing of a lack of thought put into the matter by you. The fact is this, you have no valid evidence to support your beliefs. Valid, by the way, is a qualifier pertaining to something doing as it was intended. If I said the sky is blue, therefore you're a murderer, that'd be invalid evidence as a conclusion does not follow the evidence presented. And yet that's all you're doing here with the mind, the universe, and God. You're blindly asserting God exists and claiming completely irrelevant pieces of information validates that assertion somehow or another. So I'm sorry, but you are operating on blind faith, whether or not you like to admit it.
The third thing, please stop denying the fact that you have a worldview, okay? If you're an atheist, you may not have what's called an atheistic worldview, and I understand that, but you do hold to a secular worldview, one that is not of God and does not have God in it at all. With this worldview, it is not tenable, it is not livable in society because it breeds subjectivity and relativism. It doesn't show sacredness of human life like the Christian worldview does, that God created us, me and you, in His image. There's a sacredness, there's a sanctity of life.
You started off well acknowledging the difference between being an atheist and holding a secular worldview. Such a shame it then devolved into a pile of putrid toss. I'm a secular humanist, a fact independent of my atheism, and yet I hold all human life to have inherent value. From this simple basis, I hold to the idea that we as people can explore morality, utilizing secular ethics to come up with a standardized model of conduct, an idea that has proven most fruitful in being the sole origin of both human and civil rights, as well as medical ethics. This can be verified in the very simple fact that the religion of Christianity permits chattel slavery with no holds barred, so long as the individual was of non-Hebrew or non-Israelite origin. You could rape them, mutilate them, murder them, anything. They were your property for life. They had no rights as property and could even be inherited generation to generation as property. There's not a single regulation in the Bible for non-Hebrew, non-Israelite slaves. None. With the slaves of God's apparently chosen people, it's a bit different. They get the Slavery Plus package, sometimes referred to as indentured servitude, only if they're male, however. Here there are some conditions on how hard they can be beaten, how many days they must live before they can die from said beating for the owner to get off scot-free, and how a slave owner can keep said man's family ransom to effectively make them his property forever. So it's a little different there, but it's still slavery. Now the fact that as a society we've managed to evolve beyond this is evidence to the superiority of secular ethics to at least biblical morality, and I would go so far as to argue all faith-based morality, since if you can get a person to believe anything exists, you can naturally get them to believe anything is morally righteous. The Bible, for example, discusses the conquest rape of virgin girls, child slaves taken as the spoils of war in Numbers, and goes into even greater depth about the whole process in Deuteronomy, which describes how many days a Christian must wait before he can rape said virgin girls. So you can fuck off with your pretense that Christianity has some great basis for morality. It doesn't.
4. Please stop saying evil disproves God. Because at best, the presence of evil would maybe discredit His character. It may show that He's a malevolent God. It may show that He's not loving and caring. But at very best, that is only disproving or discrediting His character. Which again, I could flip that right around on you and show how evil does point to a loving God.
Fun fact, That's all the Euthyphro dilemma was ever used to demonstrate. Nobody is claiming that said dilemma disproves any and all imagined forms of God. Only that the universe we live in cannot be the creation of some all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-loving God, as forwarded by the most popular religions at this current point in history. It notes that if such a being existed, they would know of evil, be able to seize evil immediately, and would have a desire to do so. Now we don't observe that, so out goes the Christian God as typically presented. If you want to forward some lesser God, then by all means do so, but I still expect you to supply some evidence of their existence.
5. Stop saying science disproves God. Even when you go to your most notable atheists, they realize, and this was the foundation of the new atheist movement, they realize science cannot disprove God. And so please stop claiming that science disproves God. Like I said previously, you gotta either have mind from matter or matter from mind. Creation explains the concept of consciousness in abstract thought. What is love? How can two people look at one abstract painting or art, one love it and one hate it? Mathematics, all these things, naturalism cannot explain. Science cannot explain. Science may be able to explain how we use the atomic bomb, but science can't explain if we should. Why should it be used or not used? Science only deals with the natural world, not the supernatural, which I propose you and I both have to believe in a supernatural, beyond natural world.
And what you propose is total crap. This is simply an argument from incredulity, i.e., I don't understand, therefore God, which given said conclusion is often known as a God of the gaps argument. Fact is, this doesn't even make it so far since what is listed isn't a mystery. We have an understanding of the physical processes behind love as well as a variety of preferences. We also understand how said preferences arise not simply through genetic variability, but environmental factors all coming together in numerous ways, resulting in a completely unique individual. No magic is involved here either. As was science disproving God, nobody asserted such. What we have noted is that science has failed to validate the existence of God, which would be possible if God had an impact on the universe, since that is what science measures. We also note how the testable claims made in your Holy Scripture about the universe fail again and again, something one would not expect to happen were it truly the divine revelation passed down to us by some all-knowing being who desired our belief and subsequent adulation. Once more we find a contradiction in the claims made by the believer, this time between said assertions and what the science has shown us.
6. Again, please stop saying there's no historical evidence of Jesus with Josephus, Pliny the Younger, Tacitus, Lucius of Samosata. You have the Talmud. You have all these authors and writers, plus you have the early church fathers. Please stop saying the historicity of Jesus is inaccurate. Even your notable atheists recognize that, yes, he was a historical person. Please stop using that.
Josephus, who was apparently born 4 years after Christ's apparent death, never actually validated the existence of Christ, but simply the growing cult that believed in them 60 years after Christ's apparent crucifixion. Tacitus, who was apparently born 23 years after Christ's apparent death, like Josephus, wrote about Christians and the God they believed in 83 years after Christ's apparent crucifixion. Pliny the Younger, who was apparently born 28 years after Christ's apparent crucifixion, discussed the handling of Christians 79 years after Christ's apparent crucifixion. Last of all, Lucian, who was apparently born 92 years after Christ's apparent crucifixion, once again discussed Christians and their challenge to Alexander. So we have 4 people who never met Christ or any of his disciples discussing the apparent existence of the early church being presented as evidence of the apparent existence of Christ. By that logic, Germania, which was also written by Tacitus, proves the existence of the early Norse pantheon. Describing what people believe is not the same as historically validating said beliefs, mundane or divine. Now there could have been a non-magical figure that we came to know as Christ. Hell, there could have been several that were blended together to make said figure. I'm not saying that this isn't likely or possible, but there's no clear evidence that demonstrates Christ, mundane or divine, actually existed. So if you're going to get huffy at someone because counter-apologists know the history and what it shows better than you and don't run unsound conclusions off of said mentions, how about you get huffy at the person you believe controls literally everything. As for what renowned atheists think, first of all, which atheist? Secondly, I don't give a shit. I don't operate on being told what to think by figures of vaguely declared authority and blindly accepting it, like you. I'm not going to parrot what some named or unnamed atheists have apparently said, and I'm glad to disappoint.
7. Stop arguing that religion does not provide any sort of scientific advancement. Let me read you off some names. You probably already heard of Isaac Newton, Johann Kepler, you got Louis Pasteur, Ernest Walton, Raymond Damadian. There are numerous people of religious faith that provide scientific advancements, medical advancements, things like that. Please stop saying religion doesn't provide scientific achievements, because it does.
Why would I when all you could do is list people who advance science in spite of being religious? Not a single one of those people advanced science through the application of the Bible. Take Newton for example. He was not only a Christian, but an alchemist. And yet, Newton's scientific advances in no way validate his other beliefs, whether it be in God, the elixir of life, or turning base metals into gold. All it demonstrates is that even smart people can isolate certain beliefs they've been raised into, or at least raised to give undue respect towards, shielding said beliefs from scrutiny, and preserving them in doing so. The fact that not a single one of these people has ever applied the same standards they apply to science to said belief in God and presented evidence for God via the peer review process tells us a lot. Religion does nothing to advance science, and all science can do in a theocratic society which used to execute and later persecute non-believers is persevere in spite of it.
Number 8. Stop saying and asking the question, who created God, when you have the same problem yourself. We both have to explain the beginning. We both have to explain the origins. But our Christian worldview provides a better clarity of the first cause than the secular worldview does.
Sure, when you stop pretending like the universe requires a creator, because that's all this comes as a response to. Your baseless assertion about the universe which, when applied equally to God, results in an infinite regress. That's your own doing. Meanwhile, the reality is a self-forming universe is vastly superior as an explanation for what we observe. Why do I say that? Well, let's just look at the assumptions I have to make versus the ones you have to. I assume the universe can self-form. That's all. You meanwhile have to assume that a universe cannot self-form, that a God can self-form, that a God exists, that said God is capable of creating the universe, that said God desired to create our universe, and that said God did create our universe. Each assumption, along with the rest of the crap you throw on top when you inevitably assert that it must be your God, effectively weigh down your argument's explanatory power. Meanwhile, the self-forming universe is just sitting there as light as ever. But it's not a case of, well, that's it. A naturalistic explanation of universal origin is superior in every way to a supernatural one, so we can just pack it in. No, we want specifics, so we hypothesize, we design, we test, we replicate, we build a consensus, and through that, grow our hypotheses into theories. Not because we have to, else theism reigns supreme. Theism can't even make it past the hypothesis building stage, let alone to the theory stage. We do so because we're curious little blighters who want to understand things around us. And I mean truly understand, not just declare to understand and walk off all smug like the religious apologist.
9. Please stop claiming that only stupid people are atheists. Please stop saying only stupid people or brainwashed people or indoctrinated people turn out to be theists. Theism has nothing to do with intellect, okay? You have Andrew Kamal, you have Christopher Hirata, you have Rick Rosner. 3 people with some of the highest IQ scores we know of. And they are each theists, okay? So please stop saying that theism is only a faith for dumb people. Back your arguments up with stats, with rational explanations and proofs.
I don't say theism is restricted to the ignorant. Merely that it can only exist in willful ignorance. Being smart and educated does not stop a person walling off certain beliefs from scrutiny. That's just a sad fact of human existence. We are creatures with emotion, and no matter how high your IQ, those emotions can warp our perspectives. That's why we don't base science on the intelligence of those who believe in something. Rather, we base science in what can be demonstrated, valid evidence that is replicable. There is no justification for an educated and intellectually honest individual who applies their reasoning faculties across the board to believe in God. None. And as noted at the start, there's an important difference between this and what you are presenting. Now I get that you most likely disagree, but in order to convince me that I am wrong in what I just stated, what I require is very simple. Supply valid evidence for God. Evidence that clearly demonstrates God and only God. Assertions as offered throughout your video need not apply.
Finally, number 10, please stop regurgitating. Okay, now I understand Christians on the other side, sometimes we regurgitate too, but please do your own research, okay? If Jesus Christ was a real person, if Jesus Christ was crucified by Pontius Pilate during the first century AD, then that is the most important event in the history of mankind. Because on that cross, Jesus Christ died for my sins and for your sins. To simply just regurgitate and push arguments off because this is what we've heard other people that just hate God for emotional reasons, you will give an account at the end when you die and meet God on why you chose to reject the sacrifice of Jesus. Please stop regurgitating, and I challenge you, look into the evidence for yourself. If you're an atheist and you're watching, I pray that you do that. Drop me a line in the comments below. Show me how you disagree with any or all of my 10 points, and we'll go from there.
Well, my first issue has got to be the way that you seemingly can't make up your mind. I mean, you just told us to stop regurgitating what we've heard and do our own research mere minutes after you made the following appeal.
Even your notable atheists recognize that, yes, he was a historical person. Please stop using that.
So which is it? Am I supposed to stop making the same points as other atheists and quote, think for myself? Pretending that the two are mutually exclusive even though they're really not? Or am I meant to bow down to the authority of your unnamed notable atheists? The truth is, this has nothing to do with thinking for yourself. This apologist simply wants to set all the rules in hopes that in our restrained state, he may stand a chance at actually arguing for God. The reality is, of course, that nothing he stated here is reasonable or accurate. He either demands us to abandon our reasoning faculties and give Christianity a status it has not earned, or he lies about the argument we typically present. As for many atheists making similar arguments, that is not evidence of parroting. If a point refutes Christianity, it doesn't matter whether it's a newly discovered point or one that was understood millennia ago. What matters is the accuracy of said point, and that's all that matters. The primary argument against theism is simply this. Theism has never supplied valid evidence that demonstrates a god or gods exist. That's been true from the very day humanity invented God, and it remains true to this very day. Could you imagine parents going into a school when discussing maths with their teacher, only to get angry and argue that the teacher needs to stop parroting what they've heard from others because, quote, they were also claiming 2 + 2 = 4 when I was at school? That's pretty much what's being argued here. Apologetics hasn't really advanced since its birth. It's found new ways to present the same old incredulity as an argument for God, but the incredulity is constant. They don't prove God, they just assert it and demand others disprove their assertions. Now, if you want the record to change, how about you, the theist asserting that God exists, change the fucking record yourself? It'd be nice to watch one of these videos and be presented with some actual evidence for the existence of God, not simply unending willful ignorance. But I guess I expect too much. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the apparent 10 things atheists should stop saying. It's little more than the typical crock of shite I've come to expect. Hi there, I'd just like to say a few things here at the end of the video before you go. First, I'd like to thank everyone who's ever donated to the channel via Patreon, giving a special thanks to the following people: Hannah Banghart, Matthew Kovac, Alexia Richardson, John Schoenrock, Alexander Williams, and Daniel Martinez. Your support has ensured this channel its ability to grow over the years and really is the only thing that manages to keep the channel afloat. I'd also like to ask that you comment down below and like this video, as well as subscribe and follow Essence of Thought on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Please also consider following Atheist Alliance International on Facebook, an organisation dedicated to helping atheists around the globe. Any comments utilising language which insults others on the basis of perceived gender, sexuality, ethnicity or ability both mental and physical will be removed immediately, and the commenter may be blocked on the moderator's discretion. Let's keep this space one which upholds the humanist values. Thank you.